so we don't waste anyone's time, and we have a right class. This week's parsha is Parshas Kisavai. Parshas Kisavai is again Parshas Kiseitze. Kiseitze in Chumash Dvorim. Parshas Kiseitze is again one of those parshiyot, which being that this is the last week of Moshe's life, and he shares a lot of different information and mitzvot, and many times he's reviewing previous mitzvot, but adding some extra insights to them, as Moses is just a week before his passing, which is in nature the direction of the book of Dvorim, of the book of the Deuteronomy, which is called Mishnah Torah. So there is actually many mitzvot in this parsha, and many of these mitzvot were also discussed in previous parshiyot. And in the previous parshiyot, we had some of them in Parshat Mishpatim, for example, returning a lost item, Hashavat Aveidah, which many details of this mitzvah of returning a lost article is discussed in this parsha, and yet it was also discussed in Parshat Mishpatim in previous parsha. So in this parsha, chapter 22, talks 4 verses discussing this very special mitzvah of returning a lost item. And similarly, there is other types of mitzvot related to every aspect of Jewish life, all the way from the end of life, which is the mitzvah of burial, that you can find the commandment to bury a body on chapter 21, verse 23, called the mitzvah of kvura. And then you have mitzvahs like marriage and divorce, and the proper way of separating a marriage, of ending a marriage, is actually in this parsha. You talk about paying employees. You talk about paying wages on time. Like I said, it's a parsha which has a lot of mitzvahs, a lot of interesting mitzvahs. And when you discuss this parsha, which has a lot of these commandments, including, for example, the last commandment in this parsha is to remember the story of Amalek. The story of Amalek was discussed in Parshas Beshalach. It's a biblical mitzvah to remember Amalek every year. So, like I said, this is what makes Chumash Dvorim a very unique type of book. Welcome, Bolens. This is what makes the book of Dvorim so special, because it is, in one end, a review, but it's not just a review, it's a review which also adds many significant details into those mitzvot. So we are going to discuss tonight one particular mitzvah, which in the parsha, it only carries one verse. But again, we're going to see as this same concept is mentioned in other parshiyot, and then see to learn the practicalities and the spiritual insight of this mitzvah. This mitzvah is called the mitzvah of ma'akeh. Ma'akeh in Hebrew means a rail or a fence. You can find it on chapter 22, verse 8. It's one verse. So what does the Torah say? Ki sivne bayis chodosh. If you build a new house, ve'osisa ma'akeh legagecha, you shall make a fence for your roof. Ve'lo sasim domim beveisecha, so that you will not place blood in your house. Ki yipoil hanoifel mimenu, if one who falls shall fall from it. What is the mitzvah basically saying? You are building a new house, construction, and the house has a roof. So the Torah commands us that roof, you have a personal obligation to create a fence for that roof. And then the Torah continues, "Velo tasim damim," and you will not place blood. It's seemingly the reasoning for the mitzvah. As in English, they translate, so that you will not place blood in your house. What is the blood issue that we are concerned about? So when you read a verse, it makes sense to assume that by the fact that somebody has a roof and the roof would not have a fence, there's a concern that somebody may go up on the roof and without being protected by a fence, it will end up falling off the roof. And falling off the roof will create a bloodshed. And this is our obligation to be responsible for that bloodshed. But we're going to start, first of all, with a few emphasis in the words of the Parsha and to see how does it fit with practicality. Number one, the Torah begins, kitivne, if you build. What is if I'm not building a house? I'm purchasing I'm already built house. Do I still have the obligation to make a makeh, to make a fence? Or it's only if I'm building a house? It says, kisivne bayis chadash, when you build a new house. Not every house is new. I can purchase an old house, or I can purchase a new house, which then I did not build it, I just purchased it. And I can purchase an old house, then it's not new. Is there still a requirement to make a fence? The literal reading of the verse is, kitivne bayis chadash, when you should build a new house. According to halacha, according to Jewish law, obviously, the same mitzvah applies whether you build a house or you buy a house, or even if you rent a house. The house that you are living in becomes a house that you are required to protect it and making sure that there's no injuries by people who are climbing up your roof. But if that's the case, and this is the case, the question is, why does the Torah use specifically in its wording of its mitzvah, kitivne bayit chadash, when you build a new house? Why is it important to mention new? And the fact that you are building it. Number two is in the end of the verse. It says, ki yipoil anoifel mimeno. Translated into English is that in order to protect, that the one who falls shall not fall from it. Or the literal translation is, you should not place blood in your house, if one who falls shall fall from it. What does it mean, one who falls shall fall from it? One who falls down, obviously, is falling. The reading of the words doesn't make much sense, literally. In proper Hebrew, it would say, do not, lo tasim damim bebeitcha, so you will not be placed blood in your house, ki yipol mimenu, because somebody will fall. And the one who falls is obviously hanofel, a person who is falling. This double repetition, ki yipol hanoifel. Who will fall? The one who is falling will fall. Obviously, the one who's falling is someone who is falling. So what is ipol hanoifel? It's as if we are talking about somebody who is falling anyway, and now, because of the fact that you are locking the fence, now he's falling even further. Ki yipol hanofel. Somebody is falling, is continuing falling. But that's not really the discussion here. The discussion is that there is a person, and that person is falling. So this last question is actually explained by Rashi. This is like one of those mystery insights given by Rashi. Rashi usually is into explain the simple understanding of a verse. But once in a while, Rashi also gives us a mystery type of explanation, which is esoteric, not necessarily of its practical and its physical explanation. Let me tell you what Rashi says. Rashi says, when it says, if one who falls shall fall from it, says Rashi, Ra'ui zelipol. This person who falls is actually fitting to fall, meaning he deserves that falling. Why would somebody deserve to fall off a roof? So Rashi explains, Lo titgalgel mitato al yadcha. You have to make sure that that person who deserves to fall, so his death should not come because of you. Shemegalgel im schus al yedei zakai vechoivo al yedei chayev. Basically, in the heavenly courts makes merit come about through one who is worthy, and the heavenly court makes that which is detrimental, that which is liable, should also come from somebody who is guilty. And we don't want you to be the guilty one. What does it mean? What does Rashi mean? So basically, this idea is being discussed in the Sifri, in the Medrash, where the Medrash talks about that we're talking about a person who falls, talking about a person that was somehow doing something which he deserved to fall off the roof. And we want to make sure that you are not the one who is in his domain, in his possession, is where the falling takes place. And again, what does it mean? What am I talking about? Why is that something so, special? Why do we getting into a scenario of a falling with someone who deserves to fall? Why can't we simply say, come on, there is a concern for danger. The danger can happen because of your negligent behavior. So you are responsible to make sure that nobody gets hurt because of you. You don't want it to happen in your house. What's this whole thing? If somebody deserves to fall and is going to fall anyway, so make sure it doesn't fall by you. You don't be the guilty party. What are you making it so complicated? If it's a simple mitzvah, seemingly an idea which we know from other sources as well in the Torah, that we have an obligation to protect ourselves. So before we going into the discussion of the meaning of this verse, I want to share with you the halachic implications of this mitzvah, okay? This is from the Code of Jewish Law. How does the Code of Jewish Law explain the mitzvah of, which is called in Hebrew, the mitzvah of ma'akeh? So the halacha says as follows. I'm going to read it in English. It reads as follows. There is a positive commandment, which, by the way, the Rambam and the Chinuch and all the qualifiers of the commandments are counting this mitzvah as a positive mitzvah. And there's a positive commandment requiring a person to make a guardrail for his roof. As it is written, and here the Shulchan Aruch quotes the verse of this week's Parsha, Ve'asita ma'akeh legagecha. You shall make a guardrail for your roof. But the condition is, says the halacha, this applies with regard to any building used as a dwelling. A dwelling means it's a home that people live there. And because people live there, they are downstairs, upstairs, and using the stairs going up to the roof. And especially when it's a nice summery night, and they want to be on the roof to take a check out the view or to get some fresh air, and or to barbecue or whatever it is. So that roof is a area which people are actually participating and walking and making their place there. So in that's a dwelling home which requires a fence. What does that exclude? So the Shulchan Aruch, but a synagogue or a house of study or a storehouse, a cattle barn, a barn for cattle, or any storehouse for straw are exempt from this requirement. Why don't they need it? So the halacha says they don't need this rail, and the reason is because people are not accustomed to use their roofs of the structure for any purpose. In other words, in our home, like I said before, people are everywhere, and sometimes they're going to go up the roof too. But when it comes to a storage room, or when it comes to a synagogue, so someone might have think, after all, a synagogue is a place that people are using also kind of like a permanent usage. They daven there, they learn there many hours, they pray there for many hours, they eat there for many hours. So maybe that should also be considered a required place for makeh, for this mitzvah, to create a guardrail. Says the halacha, no. As long as this is not a dwelling place, so we assume that people do not spend their time there, which indicates that if there is such a synagogue, which is going to handle people using the roof also and climbing on the roofs, you will be required to place a fence around. At the same time, if you have a home, but the roof is a flat, the type of roof that people don't use, it's built in a fashion that you cannot climb on it, then you also will not be required to make a fence around because nobody goes up there. As the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch that in present days, our roofs are exempt from this requirement. As this he is talking about, his roofs is in Russia and in Ukraine, and the houses were built in such a way that nobody used the rooftops to walk or to sit or to store. Versus in Israel, even today you can see that the rooftops have storage. The rooftops is a place that you dry fruit and you sit and you build a little hut on top of the roof and you watch the mountains and the view and you're catching some fresh air. But it has to be in general a home that people dwell. To the point, the halacha says, what is if you have a very tiny little house, which is less than 4 cubits of your 4 cubits, meaning a small house, which is a very tiny house that people don't even live there, doesn't have 4 cubits of 4 cubits. Then, says the Shulchan Aruch, since it's not fitting to dwell, that's not considered a dwelling, and therefore we will not need to place a fence there. So I want to emphasize something very important. And this goes back to the verse that we just mentioned before in the Torah. There are, in one end, the way you read the verse, it seems that there is a mitzvah with a reason for the mitzvah. But if you understand the way the verse was understood by Maimonides, by the Rambam, so you clearly see that it's not a mitzvah and a reason, but rather the same very verse as two separate commandments. There is a positive commandment and there is a negative commandment. And let me read the verse again so you can understand how we read it without this translation, but rather the way Maimonides halacha understood that verse. I'm going back to the verse. Verse 8. Kisivne bayis chadash. If you build a new house, ve'asita ma'akele gagecha, you shall make a fence for your roof. Stop right here. What did we just read? A positive commandment that when you build a house, you have to make a roof. Then it says, Velo tasim damim bebeitecha. You shall not allow blood to be placed in your house. The way we read it before, that part of the verse, Velo tasim damim, is a reason for the mitzvah of Micah. Why do you want to make sure to have a fence? Because by having a fence, you're making sure that there is no bloodshed in your house. People are not falling off your roof. But if that's the reason, we have a problem. What's the problem? Maimonides, he wrote a bunch of general principles, how he counted and how he qualified the Torah into its 613 commandments. And he clearly states that I did not count reasons as a part of the commandment, which means that when he reads our verse, he should have only write the mitzvah, which should be counted to one of the 613 commandments, which mitzvah? Make a fence on your roof. The reason he wouldn't count. But yet, when it comes to the list of the negative commandments, commandment 298, Maimonides does specifically say, we are commanded not to allow bloodshed at our homes, which clearly indicates that the Rambam understood that there's two separate concerns here. In one end, we are obligated to make a fence. And obviously, the fence is because of protection, etc., but we have to make a fence. And in order to be obligated to make the fence, there are conditions. What is considered a house and what is not considered a house. How tall the fence has to be, how short it has to be. There is clearly halachic implications and guidance regarding to the fulfillment of this mitzvah, making a fence. As the Shulchan Aruch writes also, if you look in Halacha, it says that the height of the guardrail may not be less than 10 handbreadth. A handbreadth is 3¼ inches. So 10 handbreadth is like over 30 inches. Okay? Over 30 inches. We're talking about 3 feet. About 3 feet is the halachic requirement for the fence. This is when it comes to the mitzvah of Micah. Says the Rambam, there's a separate issue. In addition to where and what you have to make a fence, and those mitzvahs have exemptions, like I said before, a synagogue does not need it, a small tiny house does not need it. There are conditions. When are you obligated with this mitzvah? There is an additional negative commandment, which there is no conditions for it. We have to take any measure to ensure that there is no damages caused to people by participating in a domain which belongs to us. If you have any responsibility for a location, a home, a front yard, a backyard, a car, whatever you own in the world, you are responsible to make sure that it does not cause bloodshed. Torah, Judaism, God is very much concerned with the protection of life. Every life matters when it comes to Torah law. Every life matters. ELM. Every life matters, whatever you want to call it. Make a movement. Every life. And because it matters, and it matters so much, therefore we have all this mitzvot. And this is this mitzvah which the halacha says here. And let me read it to you because it's a separate discussion. And it says like this: just as a person must make a safeguard for his roof, so too must he do so with regard to any dangerous situation on his property that presents an obstacle for a person that may cause his death. For example, this is from the halacha. For example, if one has a pit on his property, whether or not it contains water, he is obligated to erect a barrier 10 handbreadths high around it, or to make a covering for it, so that a person not fall in and die. And similarly, there is a positive commandment to remove any other obstacles that could present a danger to life, to make a safeguard for it, and to take extremely careful precautions regarding the matter. And here he quotes another verse, and this was earlier in the book of Dvorim, in chapter 4, verse 9, which it says, Ishomer lecha ushmor nafshecha me'od. Take care and guard your soul carefully. We have an obligation to take care of ourselves, to take care on our property, on our bodies, and at the same time, guard yourself properly and carefully to make sure that nobody else gets injured because of our account. And he says, if one leaves obstacles that could lead to murder, danger, accessible without removing them, for example, if he leaves an unsteady ladder in his home or courtyard, an unsteady ladder, okay? Or let's say a dangerous staircase in his house. And somebody comes to visit. So even before he comes to visit, just by not fixing it, you are now violating the positive commandment, which says guard yourself, and you violated a negative commandment that we just read, do not cause blood to be shed in your house. It talks about a very, I'm not sure if everybody can relate to that, but it talks about even raising vicious dogs, which it says it's not only that they bite, and their bite can cause danger, but they bark so loudly, so their barking can cause a woman to miscarry out of fear from that bark. They call it sometimes the bark is stronger than the bite. They have the bite is stronger than the bark, and then you have dogs and sometimes people also, which their bark is stronger than the bite. So it says that a part of keeping that dog in the house is also a part of this prohibition. Okay, so then we have safety things. You tie him to your house, and you have a leash. etc., etc. But what do we see over here? What do we see from this halacha? As the Rambam understood from this halacha, is very clear that not only is there a positive mitzvah with a reason, no. There is a positive mitzvah, and yet there is another negative mitzvah. The positive mitzvah has conditions. When do we require to do it and when not? But let's say you're in a home which does not have these conditions because people don't live there. Or a synagogue which doesn't have this condition because people don't live there. You still are required with the negative commandment, which requires you to prevent any type of bloodshed happening in your domain. This is what this halacha says. Which this, the Rebbe once said that somebody wrote him a letter. Somebody wrote the Rebbe a letter with an halachic question on the Rambam. Interesting question. The Rambam says in the laws of blessings, says the Rambam that we don't make a blessing for a mitzvah which its purpose is to protect someone. Let's say, he uses the example, if you go and you drink water and it's dark at night, you drink water from a river. So you have to be careful. You can have a little leash, a little creature in that water which can cause you some danger. So you have a responsibility, according to Jewish law, to filter the water before you drink it. So we don't make a bracha, even there's a mitzvah to watch yourself from danger. So the Rambam says, we don't make a blessing for it. Since the whole purpose is to keep it from danger, it doesn't require his own bracha. Yet, the same Rambam rules that when you are building the fence, the rail around your roof, you make a blessing. Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kideshanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu Al Asiyas Maika, to make a fence. There is such a blessing. There is such a blessing in the laws of blessing. So the Rebbe said that somebody wrote me a letter and he asked me that the Rambam seemingly contradicts himself. In one end, the Rambam says that if you are doing a mitzvah, which its whole purpose is what? To protect you or somebody else from danger, then there is no bracha required. Yet the Rambam writes that when it comes to the mitzvah of Micah, to build a fence, you are making a bracha. But isn't Micah a mitzvah which its whole purpose is to protect you from danger? Why is there a blessing for the mitzvah of Micah, of making a fence? So the Rebbe explained that the confusion is because we are looking at it as one mitzvah. As if the mitzvah of Micah is specifically to protect you of danger. But it's not so. If you look in the Chumash, you find clearly there's a mitzvah to make a Micah, and yet you can avoid that Micah, that fence, by, let's say, lowering your roof, right? It has to be a certain height from the ground, so you lower your roof, and then you wouldn't have a Micah. But then you would not fulfill the mitzvah of Micah. But then there is a separate mitzvah, and this is to ensure that there is no danger and there's no bloodshed happening on your property. For the mitzvah, which is called the negative mitzvah, which requires us with any type of protection, any type of hazard, we are required and obligated to create a protection around it, to make sure that people don't get injured. That mitzvah does not have a bracha, because the Rambam rules that a mitzvah which is all purpose is to avoid danger, we don't make a bracha of it. But in the other end, the mitzvah of Micah itself, you would make a bracha, because it's a special mitzvah. But somebody can ask, what does it mean a special mitzvah? After all, this whole mitzvah is to protect us from danger. So here we have to come and get it a little bit to understand Hasidus philosophy explains, in our Jewish mysticism understands the mitzvah of Micah. And I will share with you, as much the time allows us, delve into this very special mitzvah called Makeh. Number one, we're talking about building a new house. What is the idea of building a new house? And why is it called building? And why is it new? Since, as we know, that halachically, it's even if you don't build it, and even if it's not new, and even if you are a renter, you are still required with the mitzvah to make a fence, to make a Micah. So Hasidus comes and says, there is something else which is called building a house, that we are all a part of it. Every part of our life, every act of our life is involved in a major construction project. And as the Medrash puts it in his beautiful, famous words, Lasois lo yizborech dira ba'tachtenim. We are involved in a construction project to build a home for God in this world. God pronounced himself as being homeless. Not that he's really homeless, he could have had everything, but he chose to be homeless. Maybe he wants to identify with the homeless of Seattle or other places. I'm not sure what the reason is. And Hasidus says that nobody knows what the reason is, because really God is perfect and complete, and he could have everything without needing it. But yet he had chosen to be considered homeless and build himself a house in this world. And who are the ones who are responsible to build them that house? Me and you, he and she, each and every one of our universe in general, and the Jewish people and their unique mission in particular, are here involved from the beginning of creation, later on with the giving of the Torah, to get to the point of building a home that God can feel and make himself comfortable in every part of creation, which is going to be materialized and revealed when this all comes together at the coming of Mashiach. But this is the job, to build a home. And the home that we are building is really a new home. And the new home is, for many reasons, it's called a new home. It's called a new home, number one, because there isn't such a concept in any level of existence. And I'm not only talking in the reality of existence of our world, even in the reality of existence which the Kabbalah talks about. Worlds upon worlds upon worlds with spiritual revelations and emanations, Bria and Atzilus and above Atzilus, and they are all filled with energy and light of godliness. They also don't have that relationship and revelation which will exist when the essence of God himself will be available in this physical world. This novelty of the essence of godliness to be the reality of the physical world in its domain, in its physicality, in its materialism, is a concept that we can only refer to it as Chadash. Bait Chadash. This is a new home. Till now, nobody has a new home. You think you have a new home. You take old stones, new stones, building one on top of the other. For yourself, it's maybe considered new. For the neighborhood, it's considered new. But in its essence, in its true definition, you can't say it's new. No one ever had such a house like this. Did it never exist? Somebody put in a little extra money, so he made the racks and the stones and the wood organized nicer. But ultimately, there's no real new. No one can say, I have something new that no one never ever existed. Who has a new home? No one has a new home. There's nothing new in this world. Everything that we have existed and exists elsewhere at a modified level, at a greater level, a nicer neighborhood, a less nicer neighborhood. But don't fantasize that you have something new, because there is no new. This is not news. It is either refurbished, newly manufactured, engineered with a new mix, with a new code, and you call it new. But it's Baba Mises, it's not new. Sipurei Safta, it's not new. Nothing is new. What is new? When you have a physical world like the world that we have today, and you're going to feel that godliness is the reality of this physical world, this is going to be news. This is the only new thing which exists. And even if an angel is going to come and is going to tell you, I felt and I sensed godliness in the world of Atzilut, and is going to let you understand what Atzilut means, you're going to tell him, I'm sorry, Mr. Angel, that's not what we are dealing with. This is not new. Because all the worlds had revelations, and this is how God works, revealing some of himself and hiding some of himself and so on. You know what's going to be new? When we are learning Torah and doing mitzvahs in this physical world, and suddenly it all opens up and all gets unveiled, and we see the reality of this physical world as godliness, that's called new. This is the job that we are creating, a new world, a new experience and of godliness, and we, the people who are constructing that, will also get renewed in a way that we were never before. The levels that we're going to reach and the heights that we're going to gain by the time that when this house comes to its full construction, when the project gets complete, is a level of chidush. This is real new. This is chadash. Never ever was there a person from the times of Abraham and Moses and Aaron and Unai, Rabbi Akiva and the Rambam. Never was a person able to reach that completion of renewance which we are going to experience once the job of building the new house is going to come to its completion. This is the story of a new house. And the Torah gives us a very important piece of information, how to make sure that this house reaches its completion and we remain attached to it and we ensure that it's completing its purpose fully. Says the Torah that when you are embarking on such a mission, you have to create a fence. What is a fence? Chassidus says something so beautiful. The Rebbe explains, a fence is where it holds you back. A fence is something which, in a sense, stops your expansion. It tells you, till here do I go, and further I stop. A fence is a statement. It's a statement which says, I am not going everywhere I want, and I cannot do everything I want because I have something who restricts me from going further. This is the ultimate definition of a fence. It places you in a context of being under a certain authority and say, don't go any further. Don't allow yourself to expand to areas which doesn't belong to you. You may fall. This is dangerous. Ultimately, the fence takes a person and stops his expansion not because trying to hold them back from doing things which are positive. It's to hold them back to doing what he wants to do, and rather to keep to a program which tells them what is the right thing to do, and this is what you should do. To relate to offense, you have to be able to accept authority. We know people who jump over fences. We see them all the time. I took my kids last night to a downtown Bellevue little park on Lake Washington. I mean, later in the day, it was still light outside. And they have a little jumping off the what do you call it? The jumping off the, what do you call it? No, somebody should open his, anyway, and jumping off the in the water. Fine, which my kids did. They jumped and they went into the water and they know how to swim, Baruch Hashem. So they came back and everything was fine. But then I'm sitting on the chair and studying some Rambam and watching my kids are okay. There is a house which belongs to the park. And the house is a tall house, more than 20 feet high, maybe 20 feet. And I see two guys on top of the roof. And I say to myself, are they actually going to do what I think they're about to do? And lo and behold, these two chevra, not my kids, these two boys, young boys, teenagers, are jumping up from the 20-foot roof into the water. I thought I'm going to faint just from watching it happening. And the second guy follows them. And I said, what is going on over here? This is this week's Parsha. First of all, is there a fence? Is there a fence on the roof? And I realized, yes, there is probably a 3-foot fence. It's not a lot. There is a 3-foot fence. But it doesn't take much to jump over a 3-foot fence. So a normal person who goes on the roof and he sees a 3-foot fence, it holds them back. He doesn't have to come to the end of the roof in order to make sure that it doesn't fall. The very fact that there is a small fence, 3 feet, he knows that this is it. I got to watch myself. I can't go much further. Here they came and jumped over the fence. This is okay. This is Meshugoy. But this is what people do. You can jump over fences. Torah tells us, if you are involved in the project, which we call Dira B'Tachtoinim, to build a dwelling home for God, you have to, first of all, in the first condition, and perhaps the only condition, is to submit that there are fences. I'm not going to do everything I think is the right thing and it makes sense to me. This is in essence what the Tanya talks about, is the definition of Gedusha versus Klipa, holiness versus impurity. Klipa says, I have my conditions. I have my set of rules. I want to do what I want to do. Klipa is all about I, me. Gedusha, holiness, sanctity, godliness is all about selflessness, what Hasidus calls bittul, self-nullification. And the idea which expresses the concept of self-nullification and selflessness is this mitzvah called Micah. You make a fence and you push yourself back. It's all about me. I am not the one who is running the show. I am building a house, a new house. In order to succeed to make the house, I need to make a Micah. I need to make a fence. Bittul is the cause, is the source of any approach in involvement in building a home for Hashem. The holy Shiloh HaKadosh, we spoke about it many times in our classes. writes in this week's Parsha, he actually says those words. That why does the Torah say that you build a house, you should make a roof to your fence, you should make a fence to your roof. So he says because the roof is the height of the house, and this represents gaiva, arrogance. I'm the roof. Torah says, you want to build a house? You want to come close to me? First of all, fence your roof. Keep your arrogance down a little before you come talk to me. This is what the Shiloh says. Actually, I can get it for you. One second, let me read you the Shiloh. Parasha Teitzei. Parasha Teitzei. Here, take a look. One more second. Well, a minute, 1 second. Ravim, Amalek, Yibum. Just a second. There's so much on this parsha. Oh. Vasisa Maike legagecha, says the Holy Shiloh, that the Alter Rebbe, the Chassidim say the Alter Rebbe, is Tanya was built on the Shiloh. And the Alter Rebbe says on himself, I am a Shiloh Yid. I am a Jew which belongs to the Shiloh. The Shiloh writes, two lines. Vasisa Maike legagecha, you should make a fence to your roof. Matzati remez, I found a secret in that verse. Gag ugavoa. At a roof is high. That's what the roof represents, that which is high and tall. The roimez, and the Torah secret in this mitzvah is sheyase gvul lagaive. You should put a border, make a fence to your arrogance. Put a fence to it. Make sure it stops. Ve'im lav, if you wouldn't make a fence, misham tia nefilosoi, from there is going to become your downfall. Ki yipoil hanoifel mimenu, the one who falls will fall from it. So what does the Shiloh say? The Shiloh tells us, which we had bothered before, why does it say ki yipoil hanoifel? The one who falls will fall. Why do you call him the one who falls? Because the very fact that you are on a roof, you're already in a state of falling. Because then it means that you are identified with that which we call gaive, pride and arrogance. And this is the source of all fall downs. Everything which falls, everything which drops, everything which crashes, it all starts by those who were arrogant. If you look in history, and believe me, one of the things that I like to read is biographies. If I would, like I always say, if I would go on vacation one day and nobody would be around, I will take a sack of biography books. That's what I'm going to read. I want to hear, I like to find out about people and their lives. It's more interesting than other things. But the little bit I did read, and you can see very clearly that the downfall of governments and the downfall of authorities was all to do with this concept called climbing the roof, taking it out of proportion and forgetting about the fence, forgetting about the bittul, the thing which restricts us, the thing which holds us back, the self-nullification, which is the foundation and principal foundation of Hasidus. So this is what the Parsha tells us. Kisivne bayis chadash. You are building a new home. What does a new home mean? You are building the home, which is the ultimate new and the only new home, by making a home to God, which is the job which was given to us and our ancestors, by every part of learning Torah and doing a mitzvah. We are actually involving ourselves in that mission of constructing a home for God. Vosisa Maike, you must make a fence. The foundation and the condition to succeed in the house is by fencing yourself. Fencing yourself. And obviously, when people go into new areas, I remember at my wedding, my father spoke at Sheva Brachot. What was his speech? He paraphrased an insight that the Rebbe spoke about this concept of building a new home and making a fence, referring to marriage. A new home is when you get married. You leave one reality and you get into another reality. You are no more a single student. You are establishing a home with a family, with a responsibility, and you obviously, at some level, you are transforming from, you are moving from a world of so-called yeshiva and Torah study and paradise, when everything is being offered for you, to a world that you're going to have to toil and work and labor to make things happen. So the Torah tells us when you're going to a new reality, you must make fences. Fences means that you cannot rely. Till now, we spoke about fence being the idea of bittul, of self-nullification, of selflessness. But what the Rebbe also said, and my father spoke at my wedding, I remember, was the idea that a person always have to create fences which will protect them from stumbling, right? Actually, matter of fact, we have a bunch of rabbinic commandments that their whole purpose is to be serving as a fence, so we shouldn't trap or fall into a negative prohibition. At the same time, in any new reality you enter, from a student to a married man or woman, from a parent to become a grandparent, from a single to married, from a married to a divorcee, to a whatever it is, from 1 year to a new year. In 3 weeks, we're going to Rosh Hashanah. We're going to a new reality. So the Torah tells us, anytime you build something new, you can't rely on those fences which protected me in my previous experience. You have to now look for a new set of fences, because you are facing a new reality. You are facing a new experience. So don't say, whatever worked for me then is going to work for me now. You're getting older, or you're getting smarter, or you're getting less smart, or you're getting whatever it is. It's a change. It's something new. And that new has to require us to sit down for a moment and realize, what am I going to do that the new state of life or the new year should not fall under the rogue, should not drag me into who knows where. I got a new phone, I got a new computer, I got a new prescription, a new description, whatever it is. I want to make sure that I am fenced, so I shouldn't be trapped or fall into situations which I wasn't protected in my previous life conditions. And onward and onward and onward, each one can use his own wisdom. I'm sure there is a very nice, large group of wise people here. So you have to use your imagination to consider what is a fence to ensure that life should be complete and holy in whatever reality that we are entering. But at the same time, I want to go back to what we spoke before and to conclude with the idea. The idea of to realize that we are really all building a new home. It's very exciting. If you build a house, I mean, it's also, it takes, as they say, to build a house, and it's headaches and they have to deal with a lot. But there is a certain excitement of being involved in a new project. We are involved in a new project, and we might be or would be the ones who are completing this project. Mashiach is coming in our generation. What's the biggest proof? Because it didn't come in last generation. If I don't need any other proof. The fact that it didn't come last generation means it comes in our generation. So it's got, if the fact Mashiach is coming tomorrow. My social is coming tomorrow because it did not come yesterday, and it didn't come today, so it must have been coming tomorrow. So we are doing the final touches of this new house that we got really going to experience, to see very soon by the coming of Mashiach. So what is required from us? To remember that there is a Maike, to stick to the fence. Don't climb over no fences. Don't jump over no fences. Allow yourself, submit yourself to the fence. Say, it's not about me. It's about the higher purpose, the goal, and that's going to ensure that we're going to succeed and see the beautiful construction being rebuilt very soon, before even the New Year is going to start, and let us all celebrate it together. Very soon, the Chanukah Bayit, the new dedication of the house and the temple house, which, by the way, the temple house is going to have a fence too. The Rambam writes, it's a very interesting discussion. The Rambam said that even though a synagogue does not have to have a maike, a fence, but the temple does need to have a fence. And it makes sense the way it's explained by the Rebbe also, because a synagogue is not meant to live in it. But in the temple, you ate in the temple. So many people came to visit the temple. So whatever roof was in the temple needed to be fenced, making sure that Chas v'Shalom, God forbid, no one else gets injured and so on. So, my dear friends, I want to wish you, first of all, a good gebenched year. It's the custom in this time of the year to wish each other a kativa v'chatima tova. We are still in August. Don't get too down on yourself. We are still in August. There's a few more days left to August. Enjoy the summer and learn and daven, and we shall see each other, God willing, very soon, united physically in our shul, in our library, in our study hall, very soon, spiritually. Amen. Thank you. Now we can